In this video, I'm going to introduce you to data types in Python. Data types define the kind of data that can be stored and manipulated in variables. Each data type has unique properties, behaviors, and operations associated with it, and Python provides numerous built-in data types and allows users to define their own data types by creating classes. As you can see here, we have numeric types, sequence types, mapping type, set types, Boolean type, and none type. There's also a byte type, but it is a bit advanced for the scope of this series, so we won't be talking about it. Under numeric types, we have int, which is short for integer, float, and complex. Integer values are whole numbers, 1, 1000, -25. Unlike other programming languages where the minimum and maximum integer is determined by the type of int, by the data type, Python does not have that limitation. You can have an integer that's 200 digits long, and Python handles it just fine. Floating point numbers are basically numbers with decimal places in them. Python can handle up to 17 significant digits. However, due to the way that floating point numbers are stored in binary, there are some issues when doing arithmetics with floating point numbers. We'll go over that in more detail later in the series, but for now, just be aware of it. Complex numbers are used in advanced mathematics and won't be in the scope of this series. Then we have sequence types, which are str, which is short for string, list, tuple, and range. A string is just a sequence of characters, so this right here would just be a sequence of the characters HELLO. A list is an ordered collection of items. You can see here in square brackets, we have 1, 2, 3. Square brackets denotes a list in Python. And you'll see the word ordered here, meaning that these are accessible by their index. Python is a zero index language, meaning the first element in the list is index 0, index 1, index 2, and so on. A tuple is an immutable ordered collection of items. This word immutable here means that once a tuple is created, it cannot be changed. It cannot have any elements added to it, taken away from it, and no elements in it can be modified in any way. You'll see that the tuple is in parentheses. Then we have a range, which is an immutable sequence of numbers. And the interesting thing about ranges is the numbers aren't actually generated until they're needed. So if I created a range and assigned this to a variable, and I told the print statement to print that variable, it would literally print this out right here where it says range, and then in parentheses has 1, 10, 1. But if I were to use this in a for loop, it would generate the numbers needed to use the for loop, or I could put this range into a list and it would store the sequence of numbers in the list properly. Then we have mapping type, which is just dict, which is short for dictionary, which is a collection of key value pairs where each key is unique. And you can see that these are in curly brackets. And then we have an ID or a key, and then a colon, and then the value that's associated with that key. So if I had told Python that I wanted the value that was associated with key 2 of this dictionary, it would return me the value Jane. Then we have set types, which are set and frozen set. A set is a mutable, unordered collection of unique elements. This means that because they're mutable, it can be changed after you create a set. You can add elements to it or remove elements from it. However, they're unordered, which means that you cannot access any individual elements in the set to modify them or get any information about that individual element. They contain unique elements, meaning that if you passed a list into this set constructor here that had duplicate values, the set that was returned would not contain those duplicate values. They would be stripped out and only one of each value would be returned. Then you have a frozen set, which is just a set that's immutable. It's a set that cannot have values added or taken away from it. Then we have the Boolean type, which is just a value of true or false. And finally, the none type, which is the absence of a value or a null value. So if you wanted to create a variable, but you didn't know what value you wanted to initialize it as, you could just create the variable and set it to equal none. Or maybe you had a function that is supposed to return something, but maybe you have an option where if things don't go quite right, it returns the none value instead of an integer. Aside from the complex numeric type here, we will be going over each of these data types extensively, and you will have a strong understanding of each one of them.